never imagined the day my daughter got married would feel like this, like a performance I hadn't been invited to join. The ocean roared in the distance, the Cape Cod shoreline, painted with golden light, and yet I felt more like a stranger, wandering through a stranger's dream, than a mother at her only child's wedding. Rebecca looked radiant, of course. She had always been beautiful, but the gown she wore now was something from a magazine, shimmering silk that cost more than 3 months of my rent. When I offered to contribute, she had laughed. "Mom, you couldn't afford the veil, let alone the gown." The words had stung then, but I swallowed them the way I always did. For 18 years I had swallowed hurts, traded away my sleep, my health, my future, all so she could have hers. Earlier that afternoon, I had arrived at the resort alone, my single overnight bag dangling from my tired hand. The taxi driver had given me a kind smile when he dropped me off. "Beautiful place for a wedding," he said, as if that would erase the awkward knot in my stomach. I had smoothed down my pale blue dress, the one I'd saved months of tip money to buy. It wasn't couture, but it was the nicest thing I owned. I thought the pride in my voice might disguise my insecurity when I told him my daughter's getting married. But even as I said it, the words felt hollow. By the time I stepped onto the manicured lawn surrounded by white chairs and crystal glasses, I already sensed I didn't belong. Rebecca had instructed me to come early to help with last-minute details, but no one seemed to expect me. I had wandered awkwardly until I finally found her in a silk robe surrounded by bridesmaids. She barely looked up from her phone when she saw me. "Mom, you're late. Your dress is fine. Just try not to embarrass us today, okay?" I had nodded, forcing a smile, though my heart sank. A coordinator led me to my seat, table 19, tucked away in the far back corner. Not near the family photos, not anywhere close to the spotlight, just far enough to be out of sight. By the time the ceremony began, I sat alone surrounded by strangers who didn't bother to speak to me. I didn't cry when she exchanged vows. Something inside me had calcified long ago, hardened by every rejection, every subtle dismissal. It was during the cocktail hour that David, my new son-in-law, approached me with 2 champagne flutes. For a brief moment, hope stirred in my chest. Perhaps he wanted to bridge the gap to welcome me. But then his smile, a polished, soulless smile, tilted just slightly as he leaned closer. "Rebecca mentioned you'd be helping with the final wedding costs. 50,000 should cover it." I nearly dropped the glass. 50,000, David? I don't have that kind of money." His smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. "Grace, let's be honest. Rebecca's embarrassed enough by your background. The least you could do is compensate for the inconvenience." Inconvenience. That was what I was to him. A blemish on his perfect day. Then Rebecca appeared, her dress catching the sunset like fire. She slipped to his side, her voice cool, almost rehearsed. "Mom, it's not much considering what we've done for you. We invited you despite his parents' reservations. We gave you a seat at the reception. If you can't contribute, maybe it's better if we go our separate ways. There's a retirement community in Arizona, you'd be comfortable there. Or you can pay and remain part of our lives. It's really simple." The words hit harder than any blow I had ever taken. My daughter, my only child, offering me exile as if I were disposable. I looked at them both, so sure of themselves, so untouchable. My hands trembled around the glass, but then a strange calm settled in. I took a slow sip of champagne, my eyes fixed on theirs, and whispered the words that made their confident faces flicker with something else, fear. "You forgot one thing." Their expressions shifted instantly, like porcelain cracking under pressure. They hadn't expected defiance. They hadn't expected me to have anything left to fight with. But they had no idea what I had been preparing. I excused myself lightly as if to powder my nose. My heels clicked against the stone path as I walked toward the main building, but I wasn't headed for the bathroom. My phone weighed heavy in my purse. For months, I had been gathering documents, setting safeguards, preparing for the possibility that this very moment might arrive. They thought they could corner me with an ultimatum. They thought I was powerless. They thought wrong. I slipped into the quiet of the reception hall before the guests filtered in, my heart pounding in rhythm with the ocean waves crashing against the shore. The chandeliers glowed above, casting fractured light across the dance floor that would soon be filled with laughter and clinking glasses. But I wasn't here to dance. I was here to end the performance once and for all. From my purse I pulled the flash drive I had carried for months like a relic. On it were bank statements, text messages, and a trail of breadcrumbs David had never thought anyone like me could follow. He fancied himself clever, but arrogance always leaves a footprint. It had started months earlier when Rebecca let slip about the prenup David had helped her draft. Something in her tone, in the way she spoke of safeguarding his assets, had unsettled me. So I asked questions. I listened. I watched. And when David grew careless with his laptop during family gatherings, I took notes. The flash drive slid into the venue's projector laptop as smoothly as if it had been waiting for me. A few clicks and the presentation was ready, hidden behind the slideshow of wedding photos the DJ would play later. I closed the screen and slipped back into the crowd just as guests began to spill inside, glasses of champagne in hand, laughter masking the undercurrent of tension. Rebecca and David entered to applause. Their smiles choreographed, their arms linked like royalty surveying their kingdom. They looked untouchable, and for a fleeting moment I felt the old ache, the yearning to be included, to be loved, to be enough for her. But then I remembered her voice, cold as steel. It's really simple. Pay or go. Dinner was served, toasts were made. I sat silently at table 19, my fork untouched, my eyes on the couple bathed in the spotlight. When the DJ announced the photo montage, the lights dimmed. The first slides were harmless enough, childhood pictures, awkward teen smiles, posed engagement shots. The crowd cooed and chuckled. And then seamlessly, the slideshow shifted. An email appeared, projected 10 feet tall, David's name in the header. Wire transfer confirmation, $75,000. Gasps rippled through the room. The next slide, a screenshot of David's messages with another woman, her name saved as RM, Rebecca's supposed friend, Rebecca Matthews. The words lit up the wall. Once the wedding is over, the money's ours. She won't suspect a thing. The room froze. Rebecca's smile faltered, confusion flooding her features as she turned to David. He stammered, reaching for the DJ booth, but it was too late. Slide after slide revealed the truth: offshore accounts, hidden debts, plans that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with greed. The guests erupted into whispers, then outright outrage. Diana, his mother, clutched her pearls as if they could shield her from disgrace. Rebecca stumbled backward, her gown tangling at her feet, eyes wide with horror. And David, oh David, his mask shattered. He roared for someone to shut it off, his polished charm disintegrating into raw panic. I rose from my lonely corner, my voice clear and unshaken as it cut through the chaos. You asked me for $50,000, David. You thought I had nothing left, but the only thing I didn't have was the patience to be silent anymore. Every head turned toward me. Rebecca's face contorted, anger, shame, betrayal flickering in rapid succession. Mom, what did you do? I looked at her, and for the first time in years I didn't see my daughter. I saw a stranger who had chosen someone else's ambition over her own mother's love. My heart cracked, but my voice remained steady. I told the truth you refused to see. Security arrived, murmurs rising to shouts as David tried to bolt. Cameras flashed, guests pulled out phones, and in that instant the entire performance collapsed. No more silk illusions, no more gilded lies, just rubble, and me standing tall in the wreckage. David lunged toward the projector, but two groomsmen intercepted him, their tuxedos straining as they held him back. He shouted curses that shattered the genteel facade he had cultivated for so long. Guests were no longer whispering, they were shouting, demanding answers, filming every second. Phones flashed like lightning, each burst a nail sealing his coffin. Rebecca stood frozen, trembling in her silk gown. David, tell me this isn't true, she pleaded, her voice raw, stripped of its arrogance. But the evidence still glowed behind her account numbers, transaction dates, the damning words he had written with his own hand. I can explain, he bellowed, his slick hair falling into his face, sweat gleaming under the chandeliers. It's not what it looks like, but it was exactly what it looked like, and everyone in that room knew it. Rebecca's hands shook as she tore off her diamond ring and hurled it at his chest. The gasp that followed was not just for the ring. It was for the way her voice broke when she screamed, "You used me. You used all of us." The moment stretched, then fractured. His parents tried to gather him up to shield him, but the tide had already turned. Guests crowded closer, recording, pointing, muttering words like fraud and con man. And me, I stood taller than I had in years, not because I wanted revenge anymore, but because I finally understood the weight of freedom. Rebecca's eyes found mine, shimmering with tears and disbelief. "Mom, you knew." "I knew enough," I replied softly. "Enough to protect you even when you didn't want protecting." Her lips trembled, but no words came. She turned away, collapsing into the arms of her bridesmaid, sobbing as the fairy tale wedding dissolved around her. By then, security had David by the arms, dragging him toward the exit. He thrashed like a trapped animal, spitting words that no longer mattered. His empire, his reputation, his illusions, they all crumbled in the space of minutes. The reception was over. Guests streamed out, their designer shoes clicking sharply against the marble, their laughter replaced with the sharp tang of scandal. I remained behind, sitting quietly at table 19, sipping the last of my champagne while the ocean pounded against the shore beyond the windows. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. Not because I had screamed, not because I had begged, but because I had spoken the truth when no one else dared. When the hall finally emptied, Rebecca approached me again. Her face was blotched from crying, her hands bare without the ring. She lowered herself into the chair across from me, silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive you." The words hurt more than I expected, but I nodded. "That's your choice. Forgiveness isn't owed. But maybe one day you'll see why I couldn't let you marry a lie." She said nothing. She just sat there staring at the empty dance floor until the weight of the night settled between us. We were mother and daughter, but strangers too, our bond scarred, maybe broken, but at least real now. As I stood to leave, the cool night air wrapped around me like a balm. The waves roared in approval, carrying away the last fragments of deceit. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Not happy, not whole, but free. The next morning, the headlines exploded like wildfire. Wedding scandal at Cape Cod Resort. Groom exposed as con man during vows. My phone buzzed endlessly with calls from numbers I didn't recognize, journalists, opportunists, even lawyers representing people who had lost money to David's schemes. It was surreal watching the story of my daughter's wedding become national gossip, strangers dissecting the night I had lived in raw silence. Rebecca didn't call. The silence between us stretched like an ocean. Part of me hoped she was processing, healing, finding her way back to me. Another part feared she would never forgive me, that in her eyes I had humiliated her even if I had saved her from ruin. I returned to my small apartment, peeling off the pale blue dress I had worn like armor. It smelled faintly of salt and champagne, but underneath that was the unmistakable scent of freedom. For years I had lived with the ache of invisibility, the sting of rejection, the constant reminder that I wasn't enough for the world my daughter wanted to inhabit. Yet now, standing barefoot in my kitchen, I realized I didn't need their world. I had my own. But freedom comes with echoes. At night I dreamed of Rebecca as a child, her little hand gripping mine as we walked to school. I dreamed of her laughter on the swings, of the promises I made to always protect her. Waking from those dreams was agony, because I didn't know if I had protected her, or lost her forever. One afternoon a knock startled me. When I opened the door, Rebecca stood there. Her face was pale, her eyes bruised from sleeplessness. She looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of the gown, the pearls, the arrogance. Just my daughter, fragile and lost. We sat at the table in silence for a long time. Finally she whispered, "Mom, I didn't want to believe you. I thought you were trying to ruin everything. But you saved me." The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Not just hers, mine too. She reached across the table, her hand trembling in mine, and for the first time in years I felt the bond between us flicker back to life. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted. "I don't know how to make it up to you." "You don't have to," I said softly. "Just don't forget who I am. Don't forget that I'm your mother. That's all I ever wanted." She nodded, and though her eyes were still clouded with regret, there was something new there too, understanding. Perhaps forgiveness would come in time, perhaps not, but at least we were speaking again, and that was enough. David meanwhile faced the consequences. Lawsuits piled up, his accounts frozen, his reputation ruined. His carefully polished mask had been stripped away, leaving only the hollow man beneath. I didn't need revenge anymore. Life was delivering it for me. What I needed was peace, and in the quiet of my home I finally felt it settling in. Looking back, I realized the true victory was not exposing him, not shaming him in front of hundreds. The true victory was reclaiming myself. For too long I had lived as a shadow, an afterthought in my own daughter's life. That night I stepped into the light. So, if you are listening now, if you have ever been dismissed, silenced, or made to feel invisible, let my story remind you, you are stronger than they think. You are braver than you know. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is not their downfall, it's your own freedom. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If my story touched you, please like this video. Share it with someone who might need the reminder. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and truth. And leave a comment with your own experience. Your voice matters, and I want to hear it.